Hi, this is Mindy Light Hype, and I'd like to take this opportunity to talk to you about light on form. One of the things that happens in botanical and natural science illustration is that there is an industry standard for the way that light affects the object. And what I'd like to do is just give you a brief overview in this presentation to sort of help you to understand how to set your light up and how to interpret the light source. The slide that I have in front of you right now is a photograph that I took of an onion, and I set it up in my studio on my drawing table, and the light that you see in the upper left photograph is an OT light. The OT light has a natural light in it, and it's what I recommend. The bulb tends to have a soft light to it so that your shadows are not harsh. I turned off all of the existing lights in the room, and I even pulled the shades so that the outdoor light was not coming in to the room. So really the only thing that I had here was this OT light. There is a little bit of discrepancy as to exactly how the light should illuminate, and I think that it is open for interpretation, but as you'll see as this slide show progresses, that I believe that not only should the light be at 11 o'clock, but I'm going to actually pivot it 45 degrees from the picture plane. So what you see here, the light is raking down from the left-hand side at approximately 11 o'clock. So the circle represents where the clock would be, and it's at approximately 11 o'clock. Now if you look at the onion down on the bottom, I took my 35mm digital camera and I took a picture of it. And you can see that with the direction of this particular lighting at 11 o'clock, the shadows come straight out to the right. Okay, I'm going to go to the next slide now. And what I've done is I've taken the light and I've moved it 45 degrees. So rather than it coming from the side, it actually is coming 45 degrees, as if the sun were coming over my left shoulder and raking down. And what happens is that this position takes the shadows so that they go slightly back in space. All right, so the highlight has shifted and the angle of the shadows has also shifted. But you'll also see something else happening, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to compare one that's at 11 o'clock and the other one that's at 11 o'clock at 45 degrees. So what happens is that when we look at the top one, you'll see that the light is much more dramatic. The lighting comes sort of a raking light, and you can see that in that area, the onion has quite a big area that is in darkness. The shadowed area is quite substantial because the light is only coming from the side. So what happens here is that although it's extremely dramatic, it doesn't necessarily show the details that you might be looking for if you were working in scientific illustration. Remember that for botanical and scientific illustration, details are very, very important as they determine and depict the species accurately. So what happens is that if you have very dark shadows, some of the textures or the surface contours or even some of the details are lost. So if you come down and you look at when I shifted the light 45 degrees, not only do the shadows go back in space, but it also offers a wider range of tone. So what you'll see is that the whole area of the onion, where it was in very dark shadow, has lightened up, and you see a reflected highlight and you see a lot more detail. So for me, when I'm looking to illuminate my subjects, if I have an object that's in front of me, I always choose to set it up so that I have it at 11 o'clock at that 45 degree angle. I encourage you to set up your own still lifes and your own subject matter and see if there's a way that you can sort of come up with what you think is the best. If you have an area where you have light coming from all different places, for instance, the window, in my studio I have hi-hat lights that come straight down. And so a lot of times the light can be very confusing because it's bouncing all over the place. And by setting up a light that is consistent, that doesn't change, and eliminating other lights, it brings you to a place where you can really see your subject a lot better. So I prefer to set it up at 11 o'clock at 45 degrees. The other thing that I want you to notice is that how soft the shadows are. One of the things that's important, I feel, is that if you see where the onion is touching the white surface of the paper, it is the darkest part. So point of contact is always where you're going to have probably what I would consider your 100%. And then to show that this is a shadow, the shadow very gently fades out. And I think that this is very important when you're working, trying to represent a cast shadow. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to go through and I want to sort of talk about how the light affects the different forms, the simple forms in two-point perspective. All right, what I have here is a cube, which is a six-sided structure. And if you look at the photograph up on the top, this was actually a small wooden cube that I purchased at one of the local craft stores, and what I did was I spray painted it white. And I placed it on a white piece of paper, identical to the way that I had the onion. And on the computer I came in and I added the lines so that you could see the surface contour. But if you look at it, you can very clearly see in the illustration below, or the photograph below, that you have the top, the side, and the left-hand side and the right-hand side, and then you have the cast shadow. The light set up at 11 o'clock at 45 degrees. In looking at the cylinder, I went to the craft store and I bought the forms, and they're relatively small. They're probably only about maybe, maybe an inch, maybe 3 inches tall. And I spray painted them white so that I would be able to get all of the forms with no pigment to them. So what you're seeing here, again, notice that the cylinder, the shadow fades, and also it slightly goes back in space. The surface contour has changed in terms of it moving around. The next thing is the cone. And again, you'll see the surface contour lines, the armature drawing lines have changed. In looking at the cone, you can see the reflected highlight in it, and you can also see how the shadow goes back, and it's a very soft shadow. And then finally, the sphere. This is something that I think is a really good reference for you to have, or you can start to gather your own small forms and paint them white and place them on a white piece of paper with your light set up. One of the things that I do want to point out to you, I'm going to go back up to this slide. The piece of paper that I have set up, as you can see, it's a fairly large piece of paper, and I put it on a curve up against the wall, and up in this back portion here I actually taped it to the wall. When you look at this photograph here, you don't see the background seam and you don't see the wall. This will help you to be able to understand your light source a little bit better, and you won't get confused. So it's my suggestion that if you're going to set your light up, the best thing for you to do is to take a larger piece of white paper, tape it to the wall, have it come out, and make sure that your shadows do not go up the curve of the bent paper. Otherwise, you'll be giving yourself an unrealistic shadow. I hope that this little short tutorial on how I set my light up will help you so that you can set your light up in the studio. This is Mindy Light Hype. I hope you have enjoyed this brief tutorial. If you have any questions, please send me an email. Don't forget to visit my website for more information about my online classes, free tips, and tutorials. Have a great day drawing the beauty of nature.